So how do we get there from an evolution of corporate learning? Basically, looking at traditional ILT, computer-assisted CBT training of the 80s and 90s, and we moved into the e-learning area we talked about. And now, many organizations are still really in that e-learning area, so they do ILT, they do some e-learning. Many organizations within their groups, decentralized training groups might be doing e-learning. Maybe you have an instructor-led design model where individuals are still developing their own e-learning. You haven't really moved to a shared services model. Many organizations are in that. Many are still moving into the blended or informal learning piece, so it's much smaller percentage in there. And that higher level, that collaborative or talent-driven learning is really probably a smaller piece overall, but definitely where the organization is moving. So it's starting to pull in talent management and informal learning. It's one of the two things that are really facing learning officers and learning organizations today is really the advent of talent management and the integration of talent management with learning. Many CLOs are now responsible for performance, succession, as well as even in some cases talent acquisition and recruiting, which is something you haven't seen in the past. Or now the learning organization, which has often been very separate from most HR groups, is now engulfed into a larger talent management group and a little more exposure to what's going on in learning and the value that it's providing too. The second thing is really informal learning, and that's hitting hard because we really don't necessarily understand it. So those are the two things that we see the learning market really driving towards, is more talent-driven learning and then more collaborative informal learning. This slide is very interesting because I think it talks a lot about just how people really learn. And we've always learned from a network peer organization. There's no question about that. But what technology is doing is it's allowing people to access their peers much easier than they have in the past. They're able to track who they're talking to. They're able to learn faster from people in the organization by being able to identify experts in that field and communicate with those experts, subscribe to their wikis and blogs, share that information across the organization in a much faster way than we've ever been able to do in the past. And you can see where learning and development is really become a segment of that. So how do we as learning and development professionals start to leverage into and tap into this greater network? And that's where informal learning and social learning can really help drive that for you. We also see too is peers will form little groups of peers, and they may work together within a collaborative environment within a class. Maybe they took place in a community of practice, and now they've set up their own micro blogs, if they will, working together in the organization and continuing those relationships on. And experts are much more readily available through various means of technology and definitely searching. What we're finding too is in organizations as we go, everybody wants to be able to search from a Google perspective. They want to be able to type in, find the information they need readily, who knows that information, and have access to it. One interesting, I was sitting with a focus group of audience, the peers, if you will, the end users of learning, and it really started to look at kind of multi-generational aspects. And no question, the baby boomers really liked the instructor-led training organization. Really felt compelled to it. They liked, as they called it, the luxury of going to classes than going to follow-up classes. Whereas the millennials and the Gen X's wanted to be able to have other information available to them quickly. They wanted to Google, wanted to get information. And within this one focus group, someone had actually brought out a wiki that was being developed in their organization. And the baby boomers wanted nothing to do with it. They really couldn't. So it was very glaring, the generational differences. And we're finding in our research that how younger workers learn is much different, or can be very different than how baby boomers have learned in the past. We have to be aware of that as people come into the organization. This kind of shows the evolution of corporate training. I think the key things to focus on is the programs, the disciplines, the focus on the technology in each one of these areas. But right now, we're sort of in this solve talent problem area, expanding, blended, improving e-learning in that place. And some organizations are moving into the social networking and formalizing e-learning. But what's really changed from a technology standpoint, and actually brought up the learning portals piece, is now organizations are looking at how do we put in one place where I can go and get all the information I need about the organization quickly. So it's less and less that LMS focus that we had and still have today, but it's how do you orchestrate it so that anyone can access the information quickly and readily through a search function. There's a lot of work to that, and IBM has done a great job through their learning portal and developing that, as well as social networking tools. So these tools are moving us into that direction. The focus is shifting away from blended learning, and there's still a lot of organizations that are just moving from the e-learning world into the blended learning world. Now it's how do we take that next step into collaboration tools and really integrated talent management. Any organizations that at this point in time would consider themselves fairly e-learning based and ILT based and really haven't made that move into a lot of blended learning, or is this group a little further along in that phase? What's that? Yeah. Well, and you're not alone. You're really not alone out there. There's a lot of organizations that are still in that situation. And,
Can you define for me when you say blended learning, what do you mean by blended learning?
right, it's utilizing multiple learning modalities to produce a single program.
Right.
So,
Okay, so under the umbrella of some training program, you may have e-learning, you may have you may have video, you may have a number of tools that you're calling blended learning.
absolutely, right.
Okay.
So blended learning might be that when I first come on, and actually Xerox does a great job with this. I come on to the organization, I'm going to go to a management training class. I immediately go into a community of practice. So I'm with my peers from my organization. RWD does another great job at this company. So individuals come in, they're now part of collaboration tools, so they can work with their people. They can then maybe take an e-learning course, then they come to the class, and then they'll go in 3 months later or continue on through that community practice. So it's various modalities that'll allow you to complete a program. It could be very simple. It could be reading a book and then coming to class. That's blended learning as well. I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
have another question, which is collaboration. Can you define that for me too, in your mind, what that means?
Yeah, we'll look at some definitions
Okay,
too,
great.
but it's really working together. That's really what it comes down to, is sharing information and knowledge and working together.
I was just going to share an example that we did with interactive services. And it was a blended learning example where we had an ILT for a week, but then we built a portal and had blended learning throughout the portal with e-learning and then virtual classroom and then books, some other face-to-face work group activities, but always circled around a portal. So it was a 12-week program that was fully blended from beginning to end. So, and used
Great example.
collaboration and social networking tools and all that.
Great example. That's a great example. And then that's an advanced example of blended learning. So that's basically where we're seeing a lot of the organization. And your organization has really moved more to the next stage of social networking and formalizing informal learning. From a design content standpoint, the tools that are really being utilized for rapid learning is Articulate, Presenter, Captivate, a lot of the tools that your designers may be using. And that's really taken precedent over the last 2 to 3 years. It enables subject matter experts to very quickly create a scoring-based course and actually some interactivity built into it and produce it on your LMS in a very quick manner. And that's really taken that time frame down from developing a course to maybe 12 weeks or even longer into maybe 2 or 3 weeks. A course is up, and even could be faster than that. A fairly well designed course. So now we're really starting to look at search and collaboration and really starting to build overall information architecture, which gets into your content management piece, how you manage content, how you tag content, whether or not you're going to use a LCMS or other type of database to search on that content and then deliver that up to the portal.